Welcome to Drive the Daf. Clear, structured explanation of the daily Daf in 20 minutes. You can even follow in the car.
Maseches Beitzah Daf Vav contains three primary sugyas. The first is a comparison of Rosh Hashanah to other 2-day Yomim Tovim. Do we consider the second day to be as severe in every Yom Tov as in Rosh Hashanah, or do they have different halachos? The next discussion is what happens when a chick is born with an efroach, with inside an egg, if it's born on Yom Tov. What are the halachas of that? The Gemara will discuss it at length. And the third sugya the Gemara will get into is when is a egg inside a chicken considered to be completed, and concerning what halachas is it considered to be completely formed. So Gemara begins by again comparing, as we've been discussing for quite a few daf, comparing Rosh Hashanah, the 2 days of Rosh Hashanah, to the 2 days of other Yom Tovim. We know that Rosh Hashanah is more severe. It is more likely considered a complete one long 2-day kedusha. It's not considered to be a sveikat yoma. The Gemara first discusses the halacha of a mace, a person who died and needs to be buried. We have special leniencies to bury them on Yom Tov. Comparing first day, the second day, and the other Yom Tovim to Rosh Hashanah. The Gemara starts by saying that Rava says that somebody who died on the first day of Yom Tov, you're allowed to have a goy bury him. Normally, you would not allow a goy to do malacha for you, but a special leniency for the mace, we allow it. Yom Tov Sheni, even Yisrael himself is allowed to bury a person who died. And now Rava says even if it's Rosh Hashanah, the 2 days of Rosh Hashanah, even though Rosh Hashanah is considered to be a complete kedusha, we still say this leniency that on the second day of Rosh Hashanah, a Jew is allowed to bury a mace who died. Now he says, as far as eggs that are born, that's different. As far as eggs, we do consider it one kedusha. We don't have a leniency the second day of Rosh Hashanah over the first day, and an egg that's born the first day, you can't eat the second day. Now, the Nahardoi say that the same leniency applies to an egg. An egg born the first day, you're allowed to eat the second day. And the Gemara says, why? Don't you know that maybe Elul was a complete 30-day month, and therefore Rosh Hashanah is the second day? The Gemara says, and since the time of Ezra, so far Elul was never more than 29 days, and therefore Rosh Hashanah was never really more than the first day Kedusha. The second day Kedusha was always just an extra thing, and therefore we're very lenient with that Kedusha as well. Now the Gemara says that this leniency for the dead only applies if it's been out for a while, it's been a while since the person has died, and therefore we're afraid of spoilage. Otherwise, you don't have to rush up and bury them on Yom Tov. Rav Ashi says, no, there is no isurim of Yom Tov as far as the dead. It was completely removed. It's like a weekday, and therefore even if the person's fresh, you don't have to be afraid of spoilage. If it's cold, you don't have any problems. You're allowed to bury them. Now, this halacha goes so far as you're even allowed to do things that are chilul yantif mamish and aren't even necessary. They're just an extra thing. Like, for example, to make a cloak to put on the mace that's besides the tachrichin, the shrouds that are required, an extra cloak that's put there for kavod, or to cut hadassim to put on the mace that's also put there for kavod. These are all extra things which are allowed to do, because as far as the mace is concerned, second day Yom Tov is completely a weekday. The Gemara just adds, Ravina says that today that the Chavrei are around. Chavrei are Persians who would persecute Jews and not allow them to have peace and not work. They made them work all the time. The only time we were able to get out from having to work for them is on Shabbos and Yom Tov, because we said that Shabbos and Yom Tov are not allowed to work today. Because if they would see you burying your dead on Yom Tov Sheni, then that excuse would fall by the wayside and people would have to work on Yom Tov. Therefore, we said not to bury the dead even on the second day of Yom Tov so that we don't mess up that respite. Okay, now the Gemara brings a different incident. The Gemara says that Rav Asi, or possibly Rav Ashi, depending on the Girsa, was sitting together with Ravina. Ravina was sitting in front of Rav Ashi. And it was a 2-day Yom Tov of Rosh Hashanah, and Ravina saw that Rav Ashi seemed to be sad. So he said, why are you sad? He said, I forgot to make an Erev Tafshilin. Apparently Rosh Hashanah that year was on a Thursday, Friday. It was Thursday, Friday, Shabbos. He wanted to make an Erev Tafshilin, which is a procedure that allows you to cook on Friday, when it's mutter to cook, in order to have food to eat on Shabbos. Otherwise, you would not be allowed to cook from Yom Tov for the purpose of using on Shabbos the next day. So Ravina said, so why don't you make an Erev Tavshilin now on Thursday? You're allowed to make an Erev Tavshilin on the first day of Yom Tov or the second day of Yom Tov. Now, normally Erev Tavshilin can only be made during a weekday. It has to be made before Yom Tov begins. So, but he said, no, look, you can make an Erev Tavshilin and make it tonight. If the Thursday is Yom Tov, so then Friday you're allowed to cook anyway. So there's no problem. So you say on that side, what I'm doing now is not an Erev Tavshilin. It's canceled, and I'm not doing an Erev Tavshilin on Yom Tov. And if Thursday is weekday, so then I need an Erev Tavshilin from Friday to Shabbos, because Friday is Yom Tov. So then what I'm doing now is before Yom Tov I'm allowed to do it. So you could just do it with a Tanai and say it depends what really the truth is. So he suggested to Rav Ashi, why don't you do that? So the Gemara said, and Rav Ashi did not want to do that because we don't have a leniency like that on Rosh Hashanah. You only have a leniency like that on other days of Yom Tov. Rava only said a special kula for the mace. We don't have a leniency to consider Rosh Hashanah to be maybe first day, maybe second day. It's considered to be Vadai 2 days. So Gemara says, well, what about the Nahardai people? The Nahardai people said that it's for sure first day Kedusha, not second day, in which case you don't even need an Erev Tavshilin. So Gemara said that Rav Ashi's Talmud for Mordechai said to Ravina, I'm telling you that Rav Ashi does not hold of these Nahardai. They don't hold away, there's no such leniency. The Gemara now moves to a related subject, that of a chick which hatched out of an egg on Yom Tov. So Gemara says it's a machlokas. Rav says it's usser. It's muktzah. This chick was just born. It was not edible as long as it was inside the egg shell. It was usser to eat, and therefore it's muktzah. So it stays muktzah for the entire Yom Tov. Now the other opinion, which the Gemara is attributes either to Shmuel or to Rav Yochanan, they say it's mutter, and the reason is because since now it's a chick, it's a live chick, so you can't eat it, right? But you could shecht it. So the shechita will take off the iser of Ever Min Chai. It'll take off the iser of being a live chick. It'll also take off the iser mukta. It's matir all those isurim that come before. And since on Yom Tov you're allowed to shecht it, that shechita will turn it into food. It changes its complete state from what it was before. You're allowed to shecht. It takes off all the old isurim and therefore becomes mutter. So that's the machlokas that the Gemara brings. Now the Gemara has a couple of comparisons. The Gemara says, what about a calf that's born on Yom Tov? The halacha is that a calf that's born on Yom Tov, you are allowed to shecht it and eat it. Well, isn't that mukta? Yet you're allowed to shecht it and eat it? Obviously then, you take off the iser mukta with shechita. So it's a proof to Rav Yochanan and or Shmuel. Gemara says that's not necessarily a proof. A calf, even before he was born, was food. You could always shech the mother on Yom Tov. And the halacha is when you shech the mother, that shechita works for the baby as well. It would be a ben pekua, would be mutter to eat. And therefore, it was never mukta, it was never usher in the first place. It was always mutter to eat. So the Gemara says, but what if the mother was a treifa? We don't find anywhere that if the mother was a treifa and the calf is born, then it's usher to eat the calf. Now you're not allowed to shech the calf. We don't find it's a different halacha. So we assume that it's the same. And now you can't tell me that it was mutter because of the mother, because you could never shech the mother and eat the baby, because the mother was treif. Shechita of the mother would not work to create a heter achila. So he was quiet. He didn't have an answer. So Gemara says, why were you quiet? Why doesn't he just say it's not muktzah? Because if the mother was treif, then the mother was dog food, right? You usually feed a treifa to your dog. So if it was dog food, so it's not muktzah. It has a function as dog food. So even when the baby's born, it goes from one function to another function. Is not a problem. Gemara says, I'm sorry, but it is a problem. That's not a good answer. Changing from one function to another function is muktzah according to Rabbi Yehuda, and we're holding here like Rabbi Yehuda. You change something from being dog food to people food is iser, and I'll prove it to you, because if you change something from being people food to dog food, it's muktzah for sure. Like we have a Mishnah that says that you're allowed to cut up a pumpkin to feed an animal, but you're not allowed to cut up an avela that died on Yom Tov to feed a dog, because in the beginning of Yom Tov it was people food. It was a live, kosher animal. You could shecht it and feed it to people. If it was Shabbos, so then in the beginning moments of Shabbos, it was considered to be people food. It required shechita. You couldn't do that on a Shabbos, but as Shabbos began, it was people food. Now it became dog food. It changed functions. That's muktzah. So Gemara says, not necessarily. It could be that to change from being people food to animal food, that's muktzah, because when a person looks at his food, he does not consider it to be, if I'm not going to eat it, at least I'll give it to my dog. This is people food. Changing it to animal food is a whole different thing. However, animal food to people food is not such a problem, because people are always consider themselves ready to eat anything which turns into people food. So therefore, if you turn animal food into people food, that is, you take this mother, which was a treifa, and now a baby is born from it on Yom Tov, which is not a treifa, and therefore you can shecht that baby and eat it. So it is turned from being animal food when it was inside a treifa to being people food when it was born. That would not be a problem, and therefore it's not muktzah, even in the case where it's born from a treif mother. It's not muktzah for the simple reason that it was considered to be animal food. It was, while it was inside the mother, it was dog food, and now it turned into people food, and we do consider that to be one use all along, and it's considered to be useful all along, and it's not a problem. That's the reason why that's not a problem. However, that's different than your egg, when your egg was a chick, when your chick had not hatched, it was just an egg. There was no use for it. It was a chick inside an egg. You can't do anything with it. You can't eat it. You can't shecht it. And therefore, that it stays usher because of muktzah, even if it hatches on Yom Tov. Now the Gemara says we have brises. One goes like Rav, one goes like Rav Yochanan or Shmuel. The one that goes like Rav says as follows: a calf which is born on Yom Tov is mutter for you to eat. A chick which is laid, which his hatches on Yom Tov, is usher for you to eat. What's the difference? The animal was mutter when it was inside his mother, and therefore was considered food, and it was not muktzah. The chick, you can't say that it never had a stage of being mutter until it hatched. Now, a brisa that says like Shmuel or Rabbi Yochanan says that a calf and a chick, both of them which are born on Yom Tov, born or hatched on Yom Tov, are mutter for different reasons. For the calf, it's because it was food even when it was inside its mother, and for the chick, it's because when you shecht it, you slaughter it, it takes off all the yisurim that were on it. The Gemara brings in here another brisa. The brisa says that an egg which hatches and a chick comes out on Yom Tov is aser. That's according to the Chachamim. Rabbi Elazar ben Yaakov says even if it hatches during the week, it's aser. It doesn't become mutter to shech that chicken, eat it until it opens its eyes. As long as its eyes are not open, it's included in the iser of a chol sheretz sheretz al haaretz. It's considered to be a sheretz ha'of, and it's not considered to be a bird. It's considered to be a creeping winged creature, and therefore it is aser. The Gemara now moves on to another related subject. It's Rav Huna quoting Rav. He says that an egg is completed and fully formed only when it's laid. As long as it's inside the chicken, it's not considered to be a fully formed, complete egg yet. The Gemara wants to know concerning what halacha. The Gemara is going to try three possibilities. Where it says, first of all, maybe you'll tell me that it's still considered the meat of the chicken, and it's fleshik, it's sari. You cannot eat it with milk as long as it is inside the chicken. Only when it comes out is considered to be not meat of the chicken anymore. Now it's an egg, and it's permitted to be eaten with milk. The Gemara says it's not true, because you have a brisa that says specifically that if you slaughter a chicken and you find eggs within it, depending on how complete it is, it may be mutter to eat with milk. That's a whole sugya which will be coming up later. But there is a stage inside the chicken at which it is considered to be fully formed and permitted to be eaten with milk. So it couldn't be concerning that halacha that Rav Huna said that it's not formed until it's born. So what is it then? So Gemara says maybe it's concerned, it's as far as being able to eat it on Yom Tov. When do we say that if it is formed, when do we know that it's fully formed enough before Yom Tov that we're allowed to eat it on Yom Tov? We don't have to say that it was formed now on Yom Tov. So Rav Huna is saying only if it was born before Yom Tov. There's no stage at which you could say it's born on Yom Tov, but it was formed already before Yom Tov. It was fully formed before Yom Tov, and therefore it's not considered to be muktzah anymore. So Gemara says, but if that's true, that he's saying the only way you can eat an egg on Yom Tov is if it's born before Yom Tov, but that doesn't fit with the price that says that you could slaughter a chicken, and if you find fully formed eggs inside, you're allowed to eat them on Yom Tov, even if you slaughtered it on Yom Tov itself. That shows that it's possible that there are fully formed eggs that are still inside the chicken, and they're fully formed enough to be considered complete. There's no issue of hachana. You're allowed to eat them on Yom Tov. So Gemara says, maybe you'll tell me that Allah is not like this brisa, because we don't find a Mishnah anywhere that says that. The Gemara says, I'll prove it to you from our Mishnah itself. Our Mishnah is between Beis Hillel and Beis Shammai as to whether an egg which is laid on Yom Tov is asur or not. And that implies that if it's not laid on Yom Tov, you finally get it inside the chicken, there's no machokes. That means to say that at that stage, everybody agrees that it's mutter. It's not a problem because it's still inside the mother on Yontif. There is no issue. So Gemara says, and maybe you'll tell me, no, that Beis Hillel argues and answers this case as well. And the only reason, which we didn't discuss the case where it's inside the chicken, is to show that Beis Shammai say that it's permitted even in that case. So Gemara says that can't be, because then this Beitzah that we quoted doesn't fit, not like Beis Hillel, not like Beis Shammai. It's not like Beis Hillel because it says an egg found in a chicken is mutter, and Beis Hillel says it's aser. And it's not like Beis Shammai because Beis Shammai goes even further and says that if it is actually born, it's mutter. So it's not like fitting with anybody. So Gemara says no. So Rav Huna said it's halacha concerning something else. He said that a egg which is laid is completely formed enough to hatch. It could actually form a chicken. If it's not laid yet, it's not fully formed. If you take it out of the mother without it being laid, then it will never hatch because it wasn't completely made inside the mother. The Gemara says, why do I need to know that? Why is that important? The Gemara says, you need to know that because if somebody buys eggs and he says he wants eggs which could hatch, you have to give him eggs which were laid. You can't give him eggs which were taken from a mother. So the Gemara brings an incident about that. The Gemara says there was a person who said, I want eggs from a live chicken, and they gave him eggs from a slaughtered chicken. It came to Rav Ami, and Rav Ami said it's a mistake. They didn't fulfill what he wants. They have to give him a full refund, and he gets back his money. He could go buy eggs somewhere else. Someone says, obviously, he said he wants eggs from a live chicken. They gave him one from a dead chicken. What's the possibility that it's not a full mistake? Someone says, no, because you may interpret it as follows. You may say that really he meant to eat the eggs. He didn't mean to raise the eggs. But he said he wants from a live chicken because they're fresher. If that's the case, then you gave him not as fresh as he wanted. You only have to pay him the difference in value of fresh eggs from a live chicken as opposed to eggs taken out of a slaughtered chicken. Well, what the chiddush here is that when he says he wants eggs from a live chicken, you assume that means he wants eggs which are hatchable. And that's what he was asking for, and he didn't give him that, and therefore he gets a full refund.
Drive the Daf is a project of the Grand Woodlands Shul and is presented by Rabbi Yitzchak Landa. Find us on YouTube or subscribe to daily emails by emailing drivethedaf@gmail.com.